Let's bring you some analysis now with David Dunn. He's a professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham. Prof, always good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us. Now, in the last few days, we've seen a picture of what Trump's administration is likely going to look like next year. It does seem he's rewarding those who have been loyal to him. The defense secretary position, it's a key one. Pete Hegseth, he may be a military veteran, but is that enough to be put in charge of such a key strategic position for the US?
Yes, I think what we're seeing is Trump moving very quickly. It's only a week since the election to staff his administration with people who have two qualifications. They are loyal to him and him first and only, and they are ideologically pure in his view. So what that means is, in a raft of these appointments, you're appointing people who have little government experience. They've actually had little experience of running anything at all, and that there is a question really of their competence in these roles. Say that's not the reason why they have been chosen. So I think it will be a steep learning curve for these individuals in these new positions once they start, and it's not necessarily a good guide as to how well they're going to do in those roles, because, as I say, they come from the media, they come from think tanks, or they come from being members of Congress who are no longer members of Congress by and large, rather than having served time in any smaller roles before they've got cabinet status.
Or they come from big business, like Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, a man who runs many businesses successfully, many would say. Him and Vivek Ramaswamy, who also ran as Republican presidential nominee a few months ago, they're starting this new department. The idea, in principle, it would seem like a good one, cut down on unnecessary government spending. But in practice, are federal workers likely to be very concerned about this new department?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that the department that Vivek Ramaswamy and Musk will run will sit outside government because of their commercial relationships with the US government, things like SpaceX. It'll be a department that is an advisory role rather than actually part of an administrative process within the government. But of course, and there is scope certainly for streamlining, because the American bureaucracy is huge. But of course, the process of actually bringing about change in the administrative structure will be at odds with getting that structure to implement new policies. If he plans to actually radically shake up the way government is run, that will be a huge project in itself. And of course, it will be met with resistance by a lot of those people who actually are in those jobs just now. So it's going to be likely to be a fraught process, a difficult process, and one that won't necessarily be done very quickly. So it's at odds with the policy objectives, because to implement those policies, you need a functioning bureaucracy rather than one that's under threat of being sacked, being removed from Washington to distant parts of the United States, as has been suggested, or indeed to be amalgamated and all the work that goes in with that process, rather than actually getting the policy done.
And Prof, one of the other nominations that's come out is Mike Huckabee to be the US ambassador to Israel. That's going to be concerning to Palestinians. He's a man who doesn't recognize them. He thinks illegal Israeli settler expansion is the way forward. But as ambassador to Israel, how much power will he have in his role?
Yes, and what you didn't mention is that Mike Huckabee is also a Baptist minister and takes a lot of his policy guidance from that position rather than anything else. But he will be the right-hand man of Trump on air policy towards Israel and indeed the wider region. I think the Palestinians should be concerned about the election of the Trump administration. Trump is likely to be even more supportive of Netanyahu, even less sympathetic towards the Palestinian state, and is of course central to that policy, very keen on putting maximum pressure onto Iran, and that can take a variety of forms. It can be obviously total sanctions on Iran's oil output, which will be significant, but also possibly military pressure. Netanyahu would like to see an end to the Iranian nuclear program one way or the other. So I think that the election of Trump and the appointment of Huckabee are an indication of the direction of travel on Middle East policy from this administration.
will certainly be an impactful new administration over the next 4 years. Professor David Dunn, thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.